All right, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Bit of a late start over here in Playground's offices. We just got so excited listening to that song, we couldn't help ourselves by pausing the video. It is so good to be back this week. My name, of course, is Sasha Rice. I'm the co-founder of Playground and producer of Early Childhood Investigations. And I am so excited to be joined by Noah Hischenberg today. This has been a long time coming. I think we planned this out like almost 8 months in advance. So excited that the day is finally here. We have a few thousand of you registered for today's session, and we're just so thrilled to get into it. I know people are eager to hear from Noah, which we will in just a few moments. But first, I want to get into some of our housekeeping items to help everyone make the most out of today's session. First and foremost, the runtime for today's webinar is 1 hour and 30 minutes. So do make sure that you are somewhere quiet and comfortable to make the most out of today's session. And then I also want to call out that we have an automated attendance system. So there's no need to write in and say, hey, I'm here. Even if you leave or get kicked out for a second and come back in, there's no need to write back in. Our system is smart enough to know the total time that you've been here, and everyone who has been here for long enough will get your attendance certificate. The other piece that I want to call out, and I'll talk about this a bit more at the end, but Playground recently launched our predictive enrollment, which is our solution for forecasting all of your upcoming enrollment capacity. So all that work that oftentimes goes into your spreadsheet, which is just very clunky and error prone, we fixed, and I'll talk about more about this at the end, but there's a QR code on the screen just so everyone knows. In terms of tips and tricks today, we love to use QR codes here at Early Childhood Investigations. So have a QR code or have a smartphone or a tablet at the ready to scan QR codes when they pop up. We will also do our best to throw the links into the chat to make it easy, but QR codes are usually the best way to get access to links that are shared. Now, in addition, we record all of our webinars. We make them available on demand if you go to ecewebinars.com/recordings, including this one. This one will go up in the next day or two. But almost half of the lifetime, like millions and millions of views that our webinars have gotten, half of them have come from on-demand videos, which is kind of crazy to think about. So I encourage you to go to our website, check it out. So much good content on there. Now, in terms of participation today, we're on Zoom. So it means that your camera and your mic are off. We can't see you or hear you, but we'd love to hear from you. And the best way to do this is by using the Q&A panel. This is where you can write in if you have questions for Noah. We will have time at the end for a dedicated Q&A, which I know Noah's excited about. And then also throughout, if there are any technical problems, use the Q&A and our team will be happy to assist. Now, I mentioned this a couple seconds ago, but the chat is going to be a place that you still want to keep your eye on, even if you can't send messages into it. It's where our team, especially Hannah, will send out links and handouts and other resources as they come up. Now, for those that want to engage in real time but don't want to write out a whole comment, you can use emoji reactions. I see some of you have already figured this one out. And if you want, you could practice throwing in your favorite emoji of the options that you have. Gives me a little dopamine hit. I love keeping it on. If this is something that you find distracting or you just don't want to see it, no problem at all. There's a little arrow button in the top right corner of the reactions button that you can click to either hide or minimize the emojis as you see fit. The last piece I want to call out is closed captioning. This is something that we provide automatically. The words kind of show up in real time at the bottom of your screen in any language. And if this is something that helps you follow along, feel free to turn it on. So I always like to shout that one out. Now, Noah was kind enough to pass along his slides in advance of today's presentation. So if you are a note taker, you can feel free to scan the QR code on the screen or go to ecewebinars.com/rethinking to download the slides and use it as a note-taking guide. The link should also be in the chat as well. Now, for everyone that joins live today and sticks around until the very end, you'll be getting a follow-up email 24 hours after the webinar with a link to the recording in case you want to review anything or watch anything on demand. And then you will also get an official certificate of attendance in your email inbox within 7 days. Now, if you are watching this as a latecomer or as a recording, there's going to be a blank certificate that is provided to you. You're not going to get the automatic certificate of attendance. Now, we want to entice you to stick around until the very end, and as such, Playground is giving out a couple prizes. The first is a door prize, a $100 gift card. Yeah, pretty sweet, pretty sweet. All you have to do is just be here. We will pick one person at random and announce who that person is. We'll get in contact with you and get you your door prize of $100 gift card. And the other prize that we're giving out is a $150 gift card for filling out our survey. So the very end of Zoom, when I close it all out, there's going to be a 30-second pop-up that asks for your feedback. It literally takes 30 seconds. It helps us tremendously, and we read every single word and syllable. Just helps us know what you like and what you don't like. One person who fills out the survey will be selected at random, and we'll notify you via email to get you your gift card. Again, either way, it's really, really quick for everyone, and you have a chance to win $150, and we really appreciate it. Okay, so that is all my housekeeping items. Noah, we are so excited that you're here. If you want to take things over in the screen share and unmute, we're very casual here at Early Childhood Investigations. So the floor is yours. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sasha. I can meet you in being casual. Let's do some casual learning today. That'd be awesome. I'm so excited to be here with the Early Childhood crew, with the ECI crew. Thank you, Sasha, for the overview and for the opportunity to connect with some fellow early childhood educators today. Thank you, Hannah, also for helping make all of this possible. I really appreciate the support from everybody here at ECI. I am Noah, Dr. Hickenberg. I'm here to talk to you about trusting children more, controlling them less, and involving them more. We're going to spend the next hour just diving into some of these ideas. I hope at a pretty high intellectual level. And a little bit of my background here is that I was a threes teacher in preschool for 6 years. I'm currently in my 13th year as a preschool director, and I've been an early childhood professor for the last 4 years as well. And the only thing I would add on to what Sasha said is that I'm still pretty analog over here. And if everybody had a pen and a paper to write thoughts down for yourself, I think you'll get a lot more out of this as well. So let's dive into it. There's a couple pieces there's some definitions that I want to start off with today, because I believe that early childhood education diminishes children's capacity for agency by overly controlling their lives. So what am I talking about here? Why are we here to discuss this? Let's say what we mean by control and by agency. By control, I'm talking about all relationships are powered. And adults use rules and expectations to control children's time, bodies, and behavior within their powered relationship with young children. When I use the word agency at its simplest, I mean the way in which you matter through your presence. You are here and you matter. The world is different because of your presence. And if you were not here, it would be different again. So keep those in mind as we're going through control and agency. This is a quick overview of what are we doing here? Why am I here at 2 o'clock in the middle of my teaching day? What is this gentleman going to share with me? And what should I expect to get out of this? We're going to start with how I got here. I'm going to talk to you about Zoe's painting. We're going to move towards how we got here, a critical history of early childhood. I'm going to walk you through a little bit how our field came to be in its current version, its current manifestation. We're going to talk about the daily life of a 2-year-old from, I think, a unique perspective, that of ethnographic research, which will yield some interesting insights into our work. In that research, we're going to dive into the tension between adult control and child agency. It's that real thick tension that we're going to come back to a lot. And as the title of the webinar suggests, we're going to talk about, are we sheriffs or allies when we interact with young children? In other words, do we trust children or do we control them? And ultimately, what we're after here is a reoriented relationship with young children. The good news for all of us is that this does not take new curriculum. It does not take new materials in my classroom. It takes very little other than doing less and trusting children. Let's explore what I mean by that. Here I am. Recognize me there? I think I'm kind of easy to pick out in this one. This is my first classroom teacher. I fell in love the moment I started teaching, and I never looked back. You have this photo from your class also, right? Your first classroom. Our class photo from that year, it still actually hangs on the wall behind my desk. And you'll recognize my friends here. There's the child who ate Play-Doh off the floor. There's the one who sneezed so hard she fell over. And look at the friend in my lap. There's the squirmiest kid in the group. the one who I'm physically restraining so he would meet the adult expectations of the moment. And this image of me physically restricting a child's body so he could perform is forever linked with my first memories of being a teacher. Why? Why do we insist on control? I stuck with it. My second year teaching, Zoe, circled in red, you'll recognize her from the cover of my book, would arrive at 8:30 each morning with her best friend, Avery. They would transform into painters, not people who were learning how to be painters, but people who were meaningfully painting now. You see this in your classroom, right? The earnest expression of ideas, not in preparation, but because I matter now. Parents and teachers are so often blindly focused on the future pathways for our children that we fail to realize that for the child, this is not preparation. This is really happening, and it is really authentic. And this is my painter. This is my 3-year-old Zoe. She would patiently squeeze paint out of the large bottles into the small cups. You can see the baby food jars that we repurposed for paint. She would select her brushes carefully and proceed with slow, intentional brush strokes. She would paint every morning until we told her it was time to stop for our morning meeting. She did this for 5 months until at the end of the year, she took home her masterpiece, a butterfly. You can see it in formation there. But that's not where the story ends. It's only where it begins. 5 years later, Zoe's 8 now, I could barely believe it when I ran into her and her best friend Avery on the public bus. After excited hellos, Avery looked at her longtime friend Zoe and said with a twinkle in her eye, "Do you remember? We would come in early and paint each morning." And did you ever wonder as a teacher what happens to those memories, to those artifacts, to those cultural contributions like painting and song and stories? They live with the child. This was my learning moment. Zoe looked back at me and my heart melted. She said, "Yeah, remember the butterfly painting I made? I still have it. It's framed in my apartment." And her mother emailed me to prove it. This is that day. Later that evening, I got in my email, 8-year-old Zoe beaming in front of her masterpiece framed on her bedroom wall. And I have always held on to this lesson. Children's creative outbursts are not a collection of whimsical non sequiturs. Each painting, each creative act matters deeply to the intelligent, strong child who dreams them up. And those dreams live on long after they have left our classrooms. But the problem is our classrooms. It's the control that we insist on. In our classrooms, sharp bursts of freedom and creativity for the children during free time are demarcated by moments of control as students are moved through their daily schedule. Now it is time to sit. Now it is time to eat. Now it is time to be playfully creative. Kind of odd, right? There was the time my students created a hot dog stand in the block corner that lasted for months. There was the time Ruby taped a piece of yarn to a marble and showed me her new yo-yo. The things kids come up with just tape. And she yanked it up and down, and I can still see Ruby's proud smile, dimples in both cheeks as she showcased her creation. This mattered to her profoundly. Remember our agency definition? It was here because she was here. Ruby mattered. And then she had to put it down because it was snack time. In the preschool classroom, compliance overpowers generativity. In the years since, I've kept with me a long list of questions as I've gone through my master's work, my doctorate work, becoming a parent to 4, and moving into the director's office. Why did we tell Zoe to leave her artwork and come to meeting? Why did we tell Ruby to put her yo-yo away and come to snack time? Were our classroom routines more important than their ideas? Why was our classroom built around ordering children's activities? So as one does as a lifelong learner, I went back to school. I began to use a critical lens to deconstruct dominant practices and perspectives within our field and ultimately offer a different vision of what is possible. These became my dissertation research questions at Teachers College. I paired these questions around control and agency with an ethnographic day in the life observations of one 2-year-old child, a research project which had never before been undertaken, spending the life in the intimacy of one 2-year-old's world. I was there in the morning when she woke up. I was there at night when she went to bed, and I was along for the ride in between. pairing that with a historical and anthropological critical perspective on early childhood. I was fortunate to find a family willing to let me into their life, and 2-year-old Emily, we'll meet her soon, became my research subject and my research partner. Right away, as I dove into this work, I fell for the writing and concept of cross-cultural anthropologists, such as Barbara Rogoff, who I will cite here. Rogoff looks at how cognitive development, which in the West we think of as an individual pursuit, is deeply and meaningfully, foundationally impacted and structured by the cultural environment in which we are raised in. Rogoff shows us how in many other communities around the world, children begin to take on responsibility for tending to other kids at 5. This was not my experience with Zoe and Ruby and Emily. She continues, she tells us about cultural contexts in which infants and toddlers variously use matches, knives, fire, spears, and axes. I am not being dramatic. This is what children around the world really do with their time. And so I began to learn that the things children can do, the parts of the world they can engage in, are defined by their cultural location, which for us is preschool, and not any inherent or internally unfolding biological sequence. Preschool and early childhood are prophetic in the sense that they describe a normed childhood and then shape their subjects to that norm. So I dug deeper. How did we get here? Why is this our norm? I'm going to pause here. This slide is big for us. I'm going to walk you through each bullet point here. I started way back, prehistoric, early human history. I found a research study on prehistoric footprints. I love this. Tens of thousands of years ago in the New Mexico desert, a toddler-aged child, the footprints tell us, the fossilized footprints, was being carried and periodically placed on the muddy ground as her caregiver adjusted his or her human load, right? Someone's picking up a toddler, putting them down, picking them up. We've seen this, but why were they doing this? Well, because the footprints are intermingled among those of a giant sloth and a mammoth and indicate a pace that the lead author of the study described as if you were running to catch a bus. So what's going on here? Mom is running from an animal and her toddler is right there on her hip. The toddler was definitely not in prehistoric preschool. There was no prehistoric stroller. Those are modern edifices that, as I go through, you'll see how we came to create. Historically, that's where children always were, right there. This lack of cultural separation between child and adult would broadly hold steady around the world for millennia. This is how our genes evolved, right there. It carried straight through and was exported to colonial American households, where 200 years ago in this country, activities that sustained the household continued to involve all of its occupants. Just like those prehistoric footprints, children were right there. Child development, that watchword in our field that we are all so focused on, in early America could be summed up quickly. You had many children, and as those that survived grew, their competencies did too. There simply was no early childhood, so to speak. The Industrial Revolution changed all of that. Work and family became separate for the first time. School attendance for older children increased and gradually became mandatory. This reframed the parent-child relationship in profound ways. By the end of the 1800s, children were sorted into narrow cohorts. This is key. This is so key for our field. Children were sorted into narrow cohorts based on their age, sound like preschool yet, for large portions of their daily life, for the first time in 200,000 years of humanity. After spending the entirety of our evolutionary history right there, the importance of this change and the impact of it cannot be overstated. Children were now largely separated from the daily lives of their adults as they were pushed into a specific age range within their newly established peer group. Now we do this every day. We separate children from their adults. We've actually built our entire field around convincing the children that it's okay. Consider that their genes, their DNA, our history is telling them the opposite. I belong with you. I should be a part of the world. Don't keep me in this box. I need more, is what I kept finding from 2-year-olds in my research. This led us to 3 major demographic changes that I'll highlight quickly here that have to do with changing families. In 1890, the average number of siblings in an American family was almost 7, and it's now 166. In fact, the only child is the fastest growing family type in America and is on its way to becoming a norm. Along the way, the percentage of children with working mothers grew from 10% to 70%. And we also saw a significant delay in the age of average first birth from 21 to 27, all of which explains the demographic history behind the families in your classrooms. 2 35-year-old parents with 1 2-year-old. This is a historical anomaly, which is now the norm in our preschools. This matters. This changes the landscape of childhood. Children were, for the first time, separated within the family, not only from work to school, but also by generation. There was no intermediary anymore. There was no sibling or clan or village culture from which 2-year-olds could associate with 7-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds. There was only 1 2-year-old at home and 12 other 2-year-olds in the contained preschool classroom. Okay, next bullet point, we're looking at scientific childhood. The study of children. Prior to the 1900s, serious scientific studies about children had just not been undertaken. There was no normal. This changed quickly as the number of scholars engaged in the field of childhood study really exploded in the first decades of the 1900s as the new experts arose, psychologists, pediatricians, psychiatrists, all of which is well and good, right? There are enormous benefits for this attention to childhood, safety from abuse, safety from predators, safety from the physical dangers in the world. And yet, this created a newly normed childhood, and teachers and parents in America began to identify specific ages with specific milestones. Sound like preschool now? We're getting there, right? Operationalizing this through developmentally appropriate practices, a concept which I find generally helpful, but deeply problematic in how it essentially flattens childhood. Along the way, now this is my final bullet before we move on, the need to be anxious has been steadily fed to American parents. Maybe you're familiar with this. Maybe you've encountered some parents. With an increasing public emphasis on, but not actually an increasing prevalence of child abductions, missing children, sexually exploited children, and the various dangers of leaving your child unsupervised. We were intoxicated throughout the 20th century by the capacity to shape our children's lives for the first time through birth control, vaccines, modern medicine, age-appropriate childhood, that by the 20th century, we bought the narrative that we could, in fact, prevent our child from ever experiencing any danger. We just had to watch out, always. And if something tragic befell our child, it was our fault. We created an intensely American parenting orientation. I lean on author Kim Brooks with that phrase, intensely American, which is Brooks's words again, which is a fundamentally anxious endeavor that requires planning and control at every level. Does this sound like the children you know? Does this sound like the parents and the teachers we know? And so what this led to was a sanitized childhood, today's childhood. Within about 150 years, from the 1800s to today, children went from being active contributors to being stale objects of control. Today's childhood is thoroughly and scientifically described and normed, sealed off from adult society through preschool, segregated by discrete age bands. Again, all of this is what I'm hoping to show the history behind how and why. There are reasons for this, right? It didn't come out of thin air. And imperialistically governed by the anxious whims of narcissistic parents, one of them over here, who offer their children a sanitized, useless childhood. I'm going to unpack this. There's a lot in there, and I stand by it. Okay, so what are we talking about here? I'm in the classroom. I'm in a pre-K classroom in my preschool while I'm thinking about all of this, while I'm doing my dissertation work. And I walk into a pre-K classroom, and the teacher's just finished reading a book called Cora Cooks Pancit. And it's a book about a Filipino family cooking in their local indigenous cultural manner. Which means that the mom and the 4-year-old daughter were cooking soup together. And fast forward to the end of the book, one of my 4-year-olds raises his hand. This is one of the useless children that we've created. And he says, how could a little girl cook soup? She's not big, like a grown-up, right? And so I picture Barbara Rogoff, the anthropologist, in conversation with my 4-year-old saying, well, some 4-year-olds can cook. right? And so I'm realizing, based on my critical history of the field and this example in the class, that we've created this bizarre world for young children in which, from their vantage point, the world is divided into two categories of humans. Forget about age for a second. We're all human. There's two types of humans from the 4-year-old's perspective. Those who can do things, we call them adults. And those who can't do things, we call them children. And so with this in mind, the sanitized, useless childhood, I began my research with Emily. This is not Emily. Emily is confidential and anonymous. This is my neighbor, my old neighbor, who looks a little bit like Emily. So I use her as a stand-in. So you can picture Emily and me doing research together. I visited Emily 3 times a month for 4-hour observations. The visits spanned her early morning yawns and pajamas through her bedtime routine at night. When all was said and done, I had amassed 27 observations and many interviews with her parents and teachers. I wore an audio recorder around my neck and transcribed the entire experience, producing ultimately 1,400 pages of ethnographic data from Emily's life. I had a lot of fun. Along the way, I kept all of this being the history, the critical, the tension, the control, and I juxtaposed the history of our field against Emily's life. I began to write about something that I would call adult imperialism, which is the overextension of adult control into the daily lives of young children. This creates an imperial childhood, governed from afar, is what I mean when I use imperial. And really grasping at, this is not a biological necessity. It's actually a cultural construction that we believe in because it exists, but need it be the way? And what issues might we have with it if we can realize, hold on a second, this is actually a historical anomaly without precedent. This thing we call early childhood, this thing we call peer groups, this thing we call 12 2-year-olds in a room for 6 hours. In Emily's daily life, I noticed 3 ways in which adults controlled and created her imperial childhood. And these were the 3 research strands throughout my work: age-based segregation, over-infantilization, and constant surveillance. For Emily, there was no escape. Preschool was conscription. Every day that I was in the field with Emily, it was right in front of me, the adult control, the child agency, tangling with each other in the classroom. To share one vivid example, I'm watching in the block area. You got a block area, right? There's a block area in your classroom. And the teachers are telling Emily to clean up, and she doesn't want to, right? She doesn't want to clean up. Her teacher comes over to her and she says this line: I know you don't want to, but you need to. This is what children learn in preschool, what they need to do despite their wants and desires. What does Emily do? She was dismayed. Emily had already rejected the demand with a vehement no, and there they were at a tense standstill. I imagined this: a sheriff and an outlaw in an old Western, hands on their hips as they faced each other, poised to draw, neither budge. Emily stood tall despite her meager stature, her stubborn persistence bulking her up a bit. This tactic of hers, her resistance, her stubbornness, was the only weapon in her arsenal, and it was well honed from nearly constant use. In Emily's life, there was always a sheriff. Her choice was to submit or resist, because this was the axis on which her relationships with adults rested. And so I noticed this throughout her daily life, how control saturated her world. And I'll walk you through now the ethnographic data as an example for each of these. We'll do one about age-based segregation, one about infantilization, and one about control. After this, as I had said at the beginning, then I'll walk you through some ethnographic data about her agency to see how she counteracts these prevailing areas of control in her life. So I sat inside Emily's classroom, which was titled The Little Ones, and I asked the teachers how their classroom was made. And so on the right, this is a screenshot from my book where I write about this, and then I've just highlighted out sort of one of the major quotes for you on the left. By age, right? Every preschool classroom I've ever been in is ordered by age, and her teacher pointed to the ground. So the youngest are here, and then she pointed down the hall. The oldest are there. And I looked down the hallway to see a sign announcing the name of the room, which doubled as a categorical description of its contents. It felt akin to the signs in a grocery store aisle, announcing cookies on one side and crackers on the other. Welcome to the little ones, Emily's classroom said. Welcome to the big ones. Without historical precedent, children's lives are spent with peer groups, while the rest of the world is closed off. Let's pause and wonder about that. What are our children missing because they're segregated by age? Another strand of adult imperialism that I began to notice was infantilization. And here was a typical lunch setup for Emily, common seen in any preschool classroom that I've ever been in, displaying the imperial relationship. Emily stood there at her cubby, staring into her bag, confused as to why her lunchbox was not there. She knew it was there, but she couldn't figure out what happened. In the same moment, her teacher was looking for her inside the classroom. Her teacher found Emily standing there in the hallway, looking into her cubby. She took Emily's hand, and have you done this? I've done it. Have you seen someone else do it? The way a trainer might lead a horse, sort of like by the wrist, right? Walked Emily to the spot at the table where the teacher had already placed the lunchbox. Emily's confusion wasn't about her own lack of capacity. It was her confusion at her teacher doing something that she was about to do. Emily was going to get her lunchbox, but her teacher had already done it. She sat Emily down, and in one fluid motion, she opened her pasta. The teacher, in one fluid motion, opened her pasta container, poured the food out onto a paper plate. Emily started eating her pasta while Tanya held up a container of grapes and asked her, Emily, do you need help with this? Tanya opened the container before Emily could respond. We all do this. We're so busy. We've got 12 two-year-olds. We've got to open it before they even respond. Tanya placed a yogurt container and a vegetable pouch in front of Emily. Again, do you want this or this? Emily, now mute, picked up the yogurt, which Tanya again opened and placed back on the plate. After a few minutes of eating, Emily stood up from the table and Tanya threw out the remains. At lunchtime, Emily didn't matter. Her agency, her capacity to matter, to do things in this world was effectively squashed through the infantilization of her skills and the control of her body. And I'll close with this section by going over really an example that I love and I think comes to highlight so much of what happens every day in our classrooms. And it's about snack time, because we all do snack. So let's talk about control for a second. In your class, in my class, I'm going to highlight Emily's class here. Emily's teachers were gentle, warm, and loving, and like in full transparency, as a director, I would have hired any of them, and as a teacher, I would have taught with any of them. They were lovely teachers. And yet, adult imperialism is baked into the model. You just can't escape it. Cantaloupe and milk were on the menu one day, and the children were scarfing them down. But tensions were rising as the sheriff, her name is Michelle in this case, the teacher, strained under the weight of Emily and her outlaw band of classmates. Law and order were breaking down. At 10:15 a.m., a disposable paper cup was placed in front of Emily, filled with chunks of cantaloupe, along with a cup of milk. Emily had last eaten at 8 a.m., over 2 hours ago, one frozen pancake in her stroller. I knew because I was there. Like her classmates, she finished her fruit quickly and wanted more. This is where we lack the capacity to trust children, and we overpower their needs. Emily wanted cantaloupe, but let's see what happens. But David, the music specialist, was entering the classroom in just 5 minutes. It's always 5 minutes, right? And his timing could not be delayed. The snack table was lively, the energy was flowing, the little ones encircled one table, some sat, some stood, all jostled. I write down in my field notes, the children are cacophonous, vibrant, and giggly. Lots of jovial chatter. By 10:18, 3 minutes later, 3 minutes after she got to the table hungry, the cantaloupe cups were empty and the requests were piling up. The teachers could not keep up. One teacher, now we've all been here. One teacher said loudly to the other, so David is here. Are we ready for David? A quick eyeball of the classroom gave the obvious answer. No. It was clear that the children wanted more, and to be frank, we're having an absolute blast. But Michelle was the sheriff, and so this was her call. I've been there as a teacher, and I would have made the same call. I didn't have a problem with it when I was a teacher, but I do now. Yeah, we're ready, she said, and I thought to myself, no way, not yet. This is how children are turned into outlaws. when we rate their behaviors, needs, and desires against adult expectations. This is how requests are turned into protests. This is how agency is turned into resistance. Let's finish, one of her classmates piped up. The teachers blew through this, as we are trained to do, and said to the whole group, so yeah, if you're ready, let's go sit on the rug. And then they sang the song. You know the song? Let's make a circle, 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 let's make a circle. No, Emily said, I'm not done. And there it was, the soundtrack to my time with Emily. When adults extended control into her life, her agency was visible through her dissent. These are but 3 examples about age-based segregation, infantilization, and control, but it was there everywhere. It was there every morning when we left her apartment, and Emily would ask every day to walk the 1 mile to school, but her mother insisted on getting her buckled into the stroller. It was there every afternoon when she desperately wanted to join her 8-year-old older sister at gymnastics. I'm gonna do gymnastics, she would say. I'm gonna be on the team, but was barred from entry and instead given free play in the same space with her 2-year-old peers. It was there on the living room floor in her apartment every weekend when her father corrected her use of the train tracks and her mother corrected her use of the board game pieces. It was there getting in the way of making friends as her requests for playdates were met with adults discussing schedules and delaying her desire. And as her and a new friend squeezed each other tight, it was there when her adult said, you're going to fall, both of you. Be gentle or you're going to fall down. They did precisely that. Hug, crash, fall. Are you okay? The concerned adult onlooker said. Despite the obvious joy and friendship, her mother was compelled to play the role of sheriff. This is not a good idea. This was the hug, keep in mind. But, and here's a big but, and this is where our talk turns a little bit, but Emily mattered. She had agency. Throughout my work, I leaned on the theories of Dr. Anna Stetsenko. I invite you to look her up after this, where she wrote about what she calls TAS, or the transformative activist stance. Stetsenko's theories became my flashlight for finding Emily's agency. She would not be steamrolled, but she was small. She wasn't as strong or as verbal or as large as the adults who would regularly seize control. And so Stetsenko offers a roadmap. She tells us that for children, agency can be present in modest ways, on local scales, and in mundane contexts. Children are capable of small local acts of agency. And so I started looking for Emily's resistance in order to better identify and support her agency. I knew each time she was presented with this choice, this never-ending choice of submit or resist, I knew what she would choose because she never bought into the status quo. Her appetite was larger than what the early childhood world allowed for. So now we'll pivot again and we'll see what this looks like, this agency through resistance in Emily's daily life. Clyde. I should say Clyde, all of these names are pseudonyms to respect the confidentiality of the research subjects that I was working with. Clyde was a student in the big ones. Clyde was a big kid down the hall, remember? The snack aisle, the little kids, the big kids. He was 2 years older than Emily and considerably bigger. Their classes would use the rooftop playground at the same time. And despite his older age and therefore placement in a different classroom, Emily would talk about him to me in our interviews. And yes, you can interview a 2-year-old. You do it with Duplos on her living room floor. That's how Emily and I would conduct our interviews. And she would talk about him as if he mattered in her life. And twice while I was in her classroom, Clyde poked his head in and found Emily. They were active in their struggle to overcome the age-based segregation that was designed to separate them. The first time Clyde did this, Emily said, "Hi back," and Clyde silently retreated. But the second time, they met each other in the doorway for what I recorded in my notes as a sweet hug and kiss on the cheek. It was real. Just like Zoe was really painting, Emily was really making a friend. I asked about Clyde in my interview with her mother, and mom said Emily is super pumped about him. And her teachers even noticed this. They said that they gravitate towards each other on the roof. They play a lot. When they see each other, I think they just get, they said, like a little bit happy to see each other. Emily resisted the age-based segregation placed on her life. This was a friendship she would not be denied. Peekaboo. You guys play peekaboo, right? Another opportunity for Emily to show her agency through her resistance to adults. In the bathroom at school, Tanya, her teacher, remember from lunch, changed her friend's diaper on the changing table. She's got her hand on the child in front of her. Meanwhile, Emily seized the opportunity below Tanya, playing on the ground, to start a game of peekaboo with another of her friends, Yuval. They started poking their heads out of the adjacent bathroom stalls. Okay, Yuval, you be in there, okay? We're going to play peekaboo. Let's say peekaboo. She squealed as Yuval disappeared and reappeared. Peekaboo, peekaboo. I thought this was marvelous, but Tanya, not so much. Emily, I say this every day, Tanya said. The bathroom is not the place to play. Please go wait in the hallway. Despite her teacher's instruction, Emily would turn diaper time into a game of peekaboo every day. This is where I would start to see her agency. I would start to see these acts not as deviant or annoying or as bad behavior, but as an earnest expression of what she needed in the world. And I would see that again when Emily would always reach for something beyond her age. I would always hear adults say, oh, you're just a 2-year-old, or you're so smart for a 2-year-old, or I didn't expect that from a 2-year-old. Sitting on her mother's lap and watching her sister, her big sister, play a game, Emily said, I want that one. She started to play the game alongside her sister. Emily's grandmother was there and laughed as she saw this, saying, of course, Emily would want the grown-up thing. I know, giggled her mom. Grandma says, well, I think it says 6 or 7 or up, the ages, right? She's reading the age-banded nomenclature, which all of our toys have, again, a modern invention. And Emily's father mirrored this when he mentioned that on a family outing to a restaurant recently, the waiter handed out drinking glasses with water to everyone but Emily. Emily got a plastic bottle. What does Dad tell me? She threw a fit because she wanted the fancy restaurant glass. I think she senses it sometimes, he continued, like she wants the big kid fork. There is something different and she wants the cool thing. And he's right about this, right? He's really capturing his daughter correctly here, to which mom added, the thing that everybody else has. John, her dad, concluded, I think that she just sees us and her sister, and then she's like, I don't want this stupid kid thing. Dad said, in fairly simple language, exactly what was on Emily's mind. Now think back to the historical construction of what we're talking about, this age-based segregation, the constant surveillance, and the over-infantilization. In another era, in another cultural location, Emily could be at that dinner table doing things, being a part of it. Instead, she's segmented, she's segregated out of it. She's not allowed the full experience. These are but 3 examples of the phenomenon. These examples being Clyde, peekaboo, and the grown-up thing, of the phenomenon that I noticed throughout Emily's life. And that I noticed how Emily's agency, her capacity to matter, could really only come through as an act of resistance, whenever she would have to defy adults' expectations and control. So in the years since, I've stayed with the questions and worked through some opportunities for us as adults to reorient our relationships with young children. I even had the chance to go back into the classroom for a year. I kept my role as director and I co-taught our part day 2-year-old class. I'll share some examples from that later, where I did my best to learn how to not teach 2-year-olds. I knew how to teach. I knew how to talk. I knew how to teach. What I didn't know is how to stop, how to listen, how to trust. I didn't know how to be an ally. I only knew how to be a sheriff. So there's 2 main threads here, and I'm going to stick for the rest of this with mostly the first one here. My book and other things that you can find out there will go into more of the second, but I'm going to focus mostly on the first for the rest of our time together. One, is about giving children the time and space needed to express their thoughts and complete their plans without turning into an outlaw. Just letting Zoe paint, letting Ruby play with her marble. And the other is involving children more, recognizing that children aren't useless. They actually can meaningfully participate in the world instead of being cut off and kept within this really, really narrow box of early childhood. And so I offer a roadmap for how to rethink our relationships. It's not only about less control, although that is a big part of it. It's about stepping away from control as the defining orientation, right? If we think in polarity or in binary, it's not that more control is here and less control is there, and we have to exist somewhere within the spectrum. It's that I want to do away with the spectrum and redefine the ways that we are connecting with children. And here are some of the ways that I suggest we connect. In our relationships with young children, we can seek out moments of symmetry rather than power. We can shed our developmental assumptions about what a child is capable of. We can listen to children instead of always giving instructions and these supposed tos. Next time you find yourself saying supposed to, just don't. We can cede territory back to children. We can rethink our relationships with young children away from control and towards trust. My hope is that by seeing an intimate portrait that I've shared with you over the last half hour of what imperial childhood is like for the child experiencing it, as well as the history behind it, I hope that we can learn a little bit of how to not always be the sheriff and find a way to be an ally. And that's where I'm going to focus now, on being an ally. Michelle and Yasmin, two of the teachers, were collaborating, and that's a word I would use often in my notes when describing teachers. They were collaborating to get the desired outcome from Emily. They were telling her to clean the blocks up. We're back in the block corner. There's a lot of work to do in the block corner. And Yasmin, and I've been there again as a teacher, Yasmin really wanted Emily to clean the blocks up. So much so that when Michelle came over to help, Yasmin kind of like stiff-armed her. Don't pick them up. And she came back to Emily. I saved these blocks for you, Emily. She really needs Emily to put them away. As adults, I write, we check in with each other, rarely allowing the child's voice to have relevance. Emily noticed that, and I know she noticed it because she said it in our interviews. Every time she built her Duplo preschool in our interviews, she ventriloquized as the teachers. And do you know what she says about us? The only thing we do two things. We say rules and we agree with each other. That kept happening when Emily would act out the teachers. The teachers would say rules to the children and they would collaborate with each other. This is where I kept seeing the box of being two as inescapable. As lovely and kind as Emily's teachers were, she had no ally in her resistance. No one to say, it must be so hard having people tell you what to do all day. And so I wonder, could we be an ally in this moment? Could we as a teacher say something like, I agree, Michelle, it is important for Emily to clean up, but today I'm going to give her a little break and I'll do it for her. Can we ever ally ourselves with the child, even just sometimes? Okay, now I'm in Emily's apartment, and I would notice these little moments when Emily's indigenous culture would sneak through. Her indigenous culture being that which she contains before the imperial adult inserts their control. I walked into Emily's apartment one morning at 6:45, and I was in for a surprise because Emily said, "Shake my hair." And her mom explained, as you can see, she had this plan. I asked her what she wanted to do to say to Noah instead of saying hi, and she said, "Go like this." And I said, like, say no. This is mom. And she says, no, shake your hair. So we shook our hair that morning instead of saying good morning. These are the actions that we can take. We can seed the ground. We can shed our assumptions about what's supposed to happen. And we can attend to what it is that the child brings to the moment, that indigenous culture that they offer the world. Instead of assuming that it's only undeveloped or immature or annoying, We can see them as a human, not as a 2-year-old who needs a partner, not a sheriff. Let's see, what would it have looked like? Oh, I think I skipped a slide here. So catch. So catch is another example, as you can see down here. Emily's telling me, Noah, you have to play catch. So I'm trying my hardest to listen, right? Instead of tell her how to play catch. Okay, great. Where should I stand? I say, this is the question of an ally. Okay, am I in the right spot? I say, again, the question of an ally, seeking her permission instead of giving my instructions. She winds up throwing the ball. I catch it. And she said, no, that's not how we play catch. I thought it was catch. She says, no. And she says, she basically winds up telling me that she's going to throw the ball. She wants me to not catch it. And then once it's come to a stop, pick it up and bring it back to her. I thought this was more like fetch. She thought it was more like catch. But by allying myself with her, I learned to play catch the way that she wanted to play. At school, we can be an ally by allowing the child to find their own rhythm throughout the day. What would a classroom with no clocks look like? No watches? Could we allow the child to tell us when they are ready to eat, sleep, play, run? And if their classmates are not all in lockstep with their rhythm, can we allow for different children to do different things? For some to eat snack, for some to go to music, for some to paint, and others to go to a morning meeting? What might it have looked like if instead, and this is a game I want you to play with yourself right now and with your co-teacher tomorrow morning, write down in your notebook something that you do tomorrow morning that controls a child, a word, an action, a behavior, and then play this game that I'm about to play with you right now from some of the examples that I'm sharing. What might it have looked like if instead of stopping Emily's game of peekaboo in the bathroom, Tanya had said to the other little ones, I've noticed Emily enjoys playing peekaboo. Would anyone like to play peekaboo today? And what if instead of telling Emily to go to music at the end of snack, the teachers had said, Emily, I can tell you're still hungry. I'll put out some extra cantaloupe for you. You can join music when you are ready. That phrase right there, when you are ready, write it down, use it. Stop using in 5 minutes. Stop using 2 more minutes. Stop using these forced timed transition songs. And instead offer to the child, I'm ready for music. David's ready for music. You can come when you are ready. We give that affordance to each other as adults, as humans, but we never give that affordance to children. This works at home as well for parents. I have my shoes on, my bag is ready. I'll be at the car. Come when you're ready. I promise you the child comes fairly quickly because they want to be with you. And they're much more settled as a result of it. Their mattering is there. Oh, I need to finish my painting and then I will go to meeting. I need to make one more mark on my page and then I will be ready. But I know when I'm ready instead of you telling me when I'm ready. Being an ally means trusting children. And here I'm going to go into 2 examples that show how I've brought these ideas into my practice at work. With pockets and with acorns. Pockets and acorns, they're little things. They're always little things that matter to children. We have to stop thinking about these large, big ideas and allow children to show us what matters to them. They care so deeply about the world. We just have to learn what it is that they care about. And so one morning as a TUS teacher a few years ago, I was reading a book, as we do during morning meeting, when Janie, the smallest and youngest child in the class, but not the quietest. Biological age does not dictate the capacity to have something to say. It does not dictate the capacity to matter. We have tricked ourselves into believing this. Janie piped up, I have a pocket, she squealed. All of 25 months old, she stood up right in the middle of my morning meeting, right in the middle of my read aloud. And she showed us how she could smush her tiny little hand inside her tiny little pants pocket. She was so enthusiastic. I was kind of annoyed. I was in the middle of my read aloud. I shushed Janie and kept reading. Relearning how to teach, or rather, how to stop teaching, was not easy. But this is what I learned from Emily. Stop teaching. Stop parenting. Start listening. Start trusting. I had to trust that her pocket comment was not an annoying interruption, but a meaningful topic of exploration for Janie, an assertion of who she was and what mattered to her that was just as valid as anything that mattered to me. And I finally learned. We began to focus on pockets because they mattered to Janie. Janie sort of dripped agency wherever she toddled. At home, at school, she shared her ideas with those around her. She manifested the future she wanted. It reminded me of running into Zoe all those years later and hearing that her butterfly painting was now framed on her bedroom wall. Her actions had outcomes that mattered. Her ideas had value in the world. Her presence was productive, right? Going back to that foundational definition of agency. The world was different because she was here. Janie mattered. The curriculum took off from there. Man, it was fun. For 3 months, a pocket check-in was the cornerstone of our morning meeting. The children really engaged. They were so excited each morning as they arrived in the classroom to show off their pockets and check out their friends' pockets. It became part of our class identity. It became how we related to each other. It became the question we had for guests when they came in. The children's native, indigenous culture took over the classroom and replaced our imperial agenda of what we wanted to accomplish during morning meeting. Janie's idea had taken root in the classroom and led Carlin, one of her classmates, which you can see here, some of the excerpts, led Carlin forcing the issue with her mom at home to change her pants before school so that she had pockets. This was so cool for me here. This is an email that Carlin's mom sent me. Janie's idea had taken root in the classroom, led to Carlin forcing the issue with her mom, who changed her pants because she wanted to be part of the cultural interactions that Janie had started. Janie proved to us that our trust in her idea was appropriately placed. We were able to support the children's culture rather than supplant it with our own. Carlin's mom became an ally instead of a sheriff, helping Carlin choose her pants with pockets instead of insisting she keep her original pair of pants on. Again, it's small, it's local, it's mundane, but it matters. Children are not capable of grand revolution in the way that adults are, but they are still capable. The trick for us as educators is learning to locate their agency, learning to peel back, to seed ground so that that agency can be expressed not only as they resist control. We need to shift away from the control so that their agency can come through cleaner, more unadulterated, without the friction of feeling like they're not supposed to do this, that I'm not supposed to play peekaboo because Tanya's changing the diaper, but I really want to play peekaboo and I'm not done with my cantaloupe. Here was the praxis, the practical application of theory that I was after. Bringing theory to life in the classrooms, turning the vision into reality. We, teachers, seeded ground by changing the morning meeting routine. We listened to children by reflecting Janie's words back to her. We shed our assumptions about what was supposed to happen, and we found symmetrical relationships with children in which they mattered too. On the right here, these are cards that we would laminate and cut out and turn into, pardon the pun, a pocket book. The children helped us take photos of their pockets during our morning meeting, and we created a taxonomy of sorts of pockets: empty, full, open, closed, 1 pocket, 2 pockets, 3 pockets, 4, tushy pocket, tummy pocket, shirt pocket, zipper pocket. This was COVID, a mask pocket, where you put your mask. We reflected back to the children how much we believed in their ideas. And today in preschool, we collect acorns. Small, but it matters, right? As I wrote in my book, in school these days, I find myself looking less and less for these teachable moments and more so just for joyful relational moments. Instead of what can I teach you or what can you learn, I'm thinking about how can we connect? Because that's the reoriented relationship that I want. The things that matter to children matter to me. And so I try my best. I stand in the hallway in my school in the morning to do morning greeting. I try my best to be impacted by the child. I try to squeal with glee when the child shows me that tiny treasure that they found earlier and have held tightly clutched in their warm, sweaty palm all day. Have you seen this? Look at a kid's hands next time they show up to school. See what's inside. Ask them about it. And do it like this. Stop talking, crouch down, focus on the child's eyes, look at their hand, and show them with your face. And follow through with the statement, what treasures did you bring today? And then back up. And meanwhile, the busyness of the school is going on around you. But that child feels seen, feels known, feels their agency. And so 2 years ago, a child showed me an acorn. She opened up her little palm, and there it was. And what I realized in that moment is how much that acorn mattered to her, and yet it had no place in the school. It would get swept aside as soon as she went into class. It would be thrown out or it would be buried at the bottom of her bag. And so in our school, what we do now every fall is right outside of my office, I have this little piece of documentation about acorns and a big bucket in which children can put the acorns. The acorns matter to the children, and so therefore they matter to me. And now when children come into school in the morning, instead of that imperial control of make sure to say hi to Mr. Noah, now look him in the eye and say hi, did you wave? Instead of that tense control, we meet children with what matters to them. Can I see your treasures? Are there any acorns that you have? This has allowed us to give children's ideas, thoughts, expressions, a centering in our school, a space to belong, a space where children can realize the things that matter to me matter to those around us. So I'm closing here the portion on mattering, and I'm going to move to my final slide here. There's some other stuff in here that I had said I would probably not get to, which is fine. Maybe we can do this again another time about children not being useless and all of the things that children can do on their own. You'll find a lot more of that in my book, but here I really wanted to focus on this concept of sheriff and ally. But again, a big part of this is also, as I learned from Emily, believing in what children can do and giving them the space in their classroom to do that. Because at the end of the day, I know that I matter because I can do things, because I can get paper for myself, because I can take the garbage out at home, because like Carlin, I can choose what pants I wear. And so I will end, like all stories, I'll end at the end. Zoe grew up. Remember my painter? Remember Zoe from the beginning? Zoe grew up. I wrote the book. I want to use the picture of Zoe as the cover of her painting. And so I email her mom. And her mom, so sweet, her mom writes me back. She says, you know, Noah, Zoe's 18 now. She has her own email address. You can send it to her. And so I send the whole manuscript to Zoe, and she writes me this back, you know, and it mattered to me, right? And so I share it here because each of the things that you do as teachers for 2-year-olds, for 3-year-olds, for 4-year-olds really does matter. Know that the children carry this with them forever. Zoe told me, I read the passage about me the night before my graduation, her high school graduation, while trying on my cap and gown. Thank you, she says, for letting me paint and express myself creatively. You as a teacher made a huge impact on me. Putting vulnerability and emotion in my work is something I have never been afraid to do. Making that butterfly painting, she still remembered. And the support that you provided is something I have remembered. And so I ask you this today, to trust children, trust that their expressive thoughts, speech, outbursts, those weird little things they do are true to who they are. That they have committed plans behind them. That if you can simply breathe life into it, the painting or the yo-yo or the hot dog stand or the game of catch, that the child will have more to say. That they're logical, that they're smart, that they have depth, and that when given the time and space to express themselves fully, can come up with cultural contributions that are unique and novel to who they are and to your space. The preschool classrooms that we teach in today are cultural inventions that live in the here and now of modern day America. We can be smarter teachers. We can be more self-aware teachers by understanding how and why control as an orientation has become the dominant structure for our classrooms. We can learn to reorient towards our children by shedding our developmental assumptions, by ceding ground, by listening to children, and by recognizing that the things they say truly do matter. They truly do have a life that lives far beyond our preschool classroom. So I thank you so much for listening. I direct you, if you're interested in more on this, to my website, noahhickenberg.com. If you want to visit it, you'll find a link to my Substack where I write occasionally. You'll find a link to my book, and you'll find a way to get in touch with me. At the bottom of the website, there's an email submission portal. If you have thoughts, questions, I love doing this. I hope that shows. If you just want to get in touch and like talk about this, I'd love to do that. If you want to learn more about this for your school setting or for your community setting, I'd love to do that. I hope that we can keep the ideas in mind here, how to be an ally and how to let go of being a sheriff. Thank you guys so much. It's really been so exciting for me to be able to share these ideas with you. Sasha, I'll turn it over to you with that. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thanks, Noah. We have a bunch of questions that we'll get into. So I'm just gonna throw them right at you. And as we pose these questions and as Noah responds, please feel free to continue posing questions in the Q&A panel. We will get through as much as time allows for. Okay, let's kick things off. There's a few questions that were kind of like a similar vein. One of them is like from the perspective of a staff member. One of them is from a perspective of like the household, but essentially it boils down to, what suggestions do you have for assisting either fellow teachers or educators in the classroom, or families, parents who have a particular idea of, what the view of children's autonomy should look like, either in the classroom or at home. And how do you kind of balance this with the approach that you're proposing here, right?
Yeah, no,
Besides your book, obviously, like any other resources that you can put forward?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to these like molecular moments, and like I said at the front, like this is not about like a shiny new curriculum or like a new set of toys that you need. It's really about parenting less, teaching less. And so I'm often challenging parents or teachers who are new to this idea. When you see a child doing something that you're uncomfortable with, that you think they're not doing what they're supposed to do, they're using a puzzle piece in a strange way, or they're going up the slide instead of down the slide, challenge yourself to do nothing and do it for 30 seconds. And the next time, do it for 45 seconds. And the next time, stretch it out a little bit. And you need accountability and you need partnership, right? I only ever learned new skills as a teacher from my co-teachers. As wonderful as my school director was when I was a teacher, what I learned best was from my co-teachers. And as a dad, where I learned best is from my wife, from my partner. And so we keep each other in check, and we go like this. Just wait 1 second, right? I was at a school play date for my current preschool 2 years ago, and I was watching a mom hover around her 18-month-old. And she was going like this, like to protect the child should she fall, right? Because she's constantly surveilled, because she's a mom in her 30s with one child who's a toddler, and she really has to protect her. And I did that to mom. I did this. I said like, whoa, like, wait a second. And she came over to me and she was like visibly relaxed that I had given her the permission to do less. Not to tell her child where to go or what to do or like stay close to mommy because it's dangerous, but like literally like back away. And she takes a breath and she tells me this, and I'll never forget it. She says, and the kid gets like 12 feet from us. And she says, I've never been this far from my child in a playground setting before. 12 feet. And the kid's a year and a half. And then the partner, her husband, comes over to us. He says, what are you guys talking about? And bless her, the mom says, Noah was just telling me to be less of a helicopter parent. She got the point, right? Like doing less. And so challenge yourself. If you're that person who's hovering, try it for 30 seconds. If you're already a bit more comfortable with it, back off a little bit more. If you're in the classroom and you see the child's doing something interesting, instead of getting in their face about it, back off. Because the beautiful thing is what's going to happen when the child has more time and more space. So one more thing in here, Sasha, and then I'll pass it back to you for ruminations or the next question. But I often hear the word empowering when I do this, and I want to push against that idea that adults empower children, because really what I found with Emily is that she was already powered, man. She had the agency. It was simply us getting out of her way. So it's not about providing children with vocabulary or skills or even practice. It's not anything that we give them. They are human, right? One of the like foundational premises of like modern thought is that humans have agency. So much of like our epistemological understanding of our race and how we interact with each other is based on that foundational thought. We matter. So do children. So it's not about giving this to them. It's about stepping back and letting their agency flourish.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. One thing that the line starts to blur a little bit is like when stuff has to happen in the classroom, and maybe has to happen is a strong word, but like Tatiana wrote in and she asked, how do we then go about, her example is how do we do transitions without saying, all right, guys, in 5 minutes we are going to clean up and go outside. Like how, with your approach, like what would that actually be like from a very tactical perspective?
Sure, great. Okay, so there's two things in there. One is, first, I want you to investigate if it has to happen, because it's us who says it has to happen. Investigate the structures of your school, talk with your teammates, talk with your school director. Don't go maverick. Like, I don't want anybody like, oh, but no, it told me not to go to the playground. Like, you still have a supervisor. You got to work through your team. But like, investigate, like, I've never been in a preschool classroom where the kids were ready for the transition. I'm not sure anybody has, right? Like, okay, we're going to the playground because it says it's time to, not because you're ready. So like, check in with each other. Do you guys want to skip playground today? The kids are loving free play. So be critical of the structure of the time is the first one. And then the second one is, if you do need to be firm, I really appreciated after my year with Emily of just being transparent about the reasons and sharing them with the children. It's the only chance that we'll have all day to go to the playground. I know that you love playing with the yo-yo right now. I'll make sure that you get to play with the yo-yo again afterwards. I'm so sorry that we have to do this right now, but it is on the schedule. It's important to go to the schedule, to go to the playground so we can get outside, and we do have to do it right now. It's a bit more empathic, it's slower, it's relational, and even if the 2-year-old might not understand the logic of all of it, you're crouching down, you're looking at them in the eyes. Again, that's a moment that I would describe as more symmetrical than control-oriented. You're recognizing the fragility of the moment. You're recognizing your own power in the moment. And the same thing for parents at home. This is really what I've tried to do as a parent in the last few years is when I can offer, when I can seed the ground and let the kids stay at the playground for longer or let them eat something extra, I will. But when I can't, I'll be fairly transparent and explicit about it. I'm so sorry, but we have to do this. This one is not negotiable. This one I'm not going to be able to change my mind on. Really just explaining the difference between when I can and when I can't. And then, connected, Sasha, like I often hear from people, but that's going to be chaos or anarchy, right? Like, but keep in mind how I started with just how saturated Emily's life was with control. It was everywhere. It was in her ponytail. Her mom put her ponytail in, that little foo-foo that toddler girls get. She put it in the crib before she was even like truly awake, so that, as mom said, it would stay out of her hair. And then every day when she got to preschool, she'd get out of the stroller, which she also didn't want to be in, and she'd rip out the ponytail, and her mom would say, oh, but you don't want it to get in your hair. And Emily would go like this. It's exactly what she wanted, was for it to get in her hair. So like, even in the ponytail, she's controlled. So I'm not advocating for no rules. I'm not advocating for no parents or no teachers. I'm advocating for less parenting and less teaching, for less rules and less control, because the child has so much of it. So I promise you as a teacher, and I promise you as a parent, if you pull back just for 30 seconds, it matters for the child. It really does. And it doesn't devolve into immediate anarchy. There are still so many rules and stipulations throughout the child's life. Nobody's going off the rails just because we're toning it down a little bit. So I don't know, does that help Sasha get at it?
Yeah, 100%. And we've had other folks come on here and kind of approach this concept of behavior and control. And I honestly, there's like a recurring theme here, and it's obviously different flavors of it, but like it's this idea of symmetry, which I think is a really good way of putting it, of like mutual respect. And just because they are much smaller humans than we are, it doesn't mean that they are incapable of understanding reasons and like appreciating that like they're also brought into the mix, and versus just saying this is the way it's going to be and there's no
and so I'll offer another example on that line, Sasha, around symmetry. It comes down to these, like I think I said, these molecular moments. It's just the small moments that we have when we interact. I had a 4-year-old girl last spring in my school who was crying when her mom left. And we're a split level school up here and down here. You enter up here. She was sitting on the steps that lead down to the lower level. She had left her classroom looking for mom, and she didn't find her. And so she just kind of parked herself on the steps there, and she's sobbing. And there's a couple things we might do here as educators. And the most common one is leading her like a horse back to her classroom and saying, mommy's always come back, adults always come back, right? Singing a song, maybe referring to Daniel Tiger. And all of this I'm really implicating as like covert methods of control. I'm just trying to get at the same outcome here, which is getting that kid back to class so she'll like get out of the way. So what I did instead was just sit on the steps with her, right? The same way that like if Sasha and I were buddies and I saw him crying, like I would just sit there. I'd let you put your head on my shoulder and I'd listen to you sob, right? Like that's symmetry between humans who trust each other. And so that's what I did with her. And I said, it seems like you're really sad right now. And she sobbed and she sobbed. And after several minutes, she looked up at me and she wiped her tears away. And I could tell she was ready. And I said, are you ready for class now? And we walked into class, right? So again, like it took all of 5 minutes on my side to not control her in that moment, but to see the symmetry in the human relationship between the two of us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. Going back to this idea of controlling less, trusting children more, but still operating within like this greater system that does exist, which exacts control. And the big thing is like, okay, let's say that you take on this approach of being an ally in your childcare program. How do you view the reality of kindergarten readiness, where a lot of children will leave your program, will leave your center, and it's been this great environment for them, but they'll go to a public school, they go to a private school, whatever it is, and those programs are incredibly controlled. Is that something that you reconcile in your head, or it's just like, hey, you know what, for this moment, for these years that they're in my program, they're gonna hopefully learn these skills of trust and growth, and whatever happens after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right, Sasha? Like that's the $1 million question. So there's two things in there. First of all, I think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think you can take this approach and still have children kindergarten ready. I don't think you have to sort of like sell the whole thing out here. I mentioned my hot dog stand curriculum at the beginning. My kid, I had 3 boys that year. They were 3.5 who had never picked up a crayon in my classroom. But instead of beseeching them, today we have to learn our letters, today we have to learn how to hold a crayon. We used the intrinsic motivation of the hot dog stand curriculum, and they noticed through their play with the project that was theirs and mattered to them that they needed a menu. And so these 3 boys, these 3 like snotty, bumbly, rough and tumble, roughhousing boys parked themselves at the art table and worked painstakingly for weeks to bang out a menu. It started with chicken scratch, it started with scribble scrabble, but over time, they learned not to write as 3-year-olds, but it emerged into letter-like shapes that we got them where they needed to go in their early academic trajectory. So as teachers, what you need to do is be aware of developmental framework, developmental expectations, and push those into those play-based moments rather than see them as occurring outside of. And then the other one in terms of like what happens next is, so the first is you can have your cake and eat it too. And the second, I lean on Vivian Paley, who I imagine many of us are familiar with. If you haven't read Paley, read Paley. And she writes that perhaps the preschool classroom can be a kinder place than the outside world. And I side with Paley on this one, that despite the rigidity of a K-12 education, despite the rigidity and nastiness of the outside world, that doesn't mean that the preschool classroom should conform to that reality. I think that we can allow ourselves, this is the beauty of the remaining independence of most preschools not being in the K-12 public systems, that we can say, here's our utopia. Here's what we want. We are all humans in this small space. How can we define our classroom as a community? How can we give children an experience in which they matter? And I know, because I've seen this happen, that the child is then not only kindergarten ready, but has something even stronger, a sense of agency, a strong self-image, a strong self-efficacy, a belief in their capacity to matter, so that when they show up in kindergarten, they're not only regurgitating what it is that the teacher says, but they might do something like raise their hand and say, I have an idea. I have a novel contribution, because I know that school is not only a place where I listen, but also a place where I matter. That for me is what I want to see in a child leaving preschool.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I didn't imply. I'm not like implying that
Mhm.
what you do in the first 5 years with these children, will be, you can't control what happens
Sure,
afterwards to a certain
sure.
degree. But I think that responsibility almost of making sure that like those foundational skills are built within them, and that confidence, that sense of identity, that the critical thinking that's so important to have in these other controlled environments is something that like they can start to build on in when you treat them like an ally.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, Noah, sadly, that is all that we have time for.
Awesome,
I
awesome. I
do
love doing
encourage,
this with you, Sasha. Thank you.
yeah, this was incredible. I encourage everyone to check out Noah's his website. He has a ton of content on there. And let me actually go over and replace the screen share.
Great.
On behalf of myself, my team, Hannah, everyone that's listening in, Noah, we're so appreciative of the time that you took to put this together. This platform's been around for quite a while, and it wouldn't be what it is without the generous time of experts and presenters like you. And so for that, we're grateful for you being here. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for being out here. I hope I'll see you out there in the real world, and I hope we'll find a way to connect within the early childhood world. Thanks, guys.
Amazing. And for everyone else, stick around just a few more minutes. We'll get you out of here by the half-hour mark. We'll do a quick word from Playground. I want to announce a few upcoming webinars. We'll do the door prize winner and then your certificates, and then we'll enjoy the rest of our glorious Wednesday. For those that don't know or forgot, in addition to producing early childhood investigations, I am also the co-founder of Playground. Playground is the only software that a childcare program needs to run and grow. So we do things like payroll and marketing and billing and attendance and paperwork and communication, food program management, and much, much, much more. The reason that we exist actually is to help make excellent childcare accessible to all. So my co-founders, Josh and Dan, they come from a whole family of early childhood educators. Their mom was a director of a center for 26 years. And she came to us and she said, "Hey, I'm finding myself spending way too much time just caught behind my desk in my office doing these really tedious things that I need to do to keep my business and my program open, but don't give me any pleasure. And I'm not finding that I have enough time to spend it in the classroom with the children and supporting my teachers or fostering relationships with my families. Is there anything that you can do to help me automate these tasks?" And that's kind of how Playground, the software, came to be, and why we built what we built. And so what we do on this mission to make excellent childcare accessible to everyone is we produce the software where it helps you reclaim a lot of that time that is otherwise spent chasing down paperwork or coordinating tours or reminding families to show up for their tours, re-engaging with families, collecting billing, just everything that you need to run your business. So with all that newfound time, we then use early childhood investigations to provide a platform for experts like Noah to come in and up-level and upskill the entire industry. So with this newfound time and newfound skills, the entire industry gets better at what it does. And that's how we achieve our goal. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about Playground, the software, and how we might help you save a bunch of time, oftentimes a lot of money on the technology that you currently buy, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen, or you can go to ecewebinars.com/try playground-44. We have a link in the chat as well. A lot of folks from these webinars reach out to me every single week after this, wanting to talk about how we can help streamline things. And it's literally what I do all day, every day. So if you're interested in learning more, just feel free to reach out. We also have a blog that we put out. It's a bunch of free resources and content, articles and guides and whatever it might be. So we're going to include the link there if you're interested in looking at it as well. Now, we have a really exciting webinar tomorrow. Lynn and Samantha are joining from the Compliance Alliance. They're talking about how compliance impacts the value of your program. Lynn is an incredible expert at compliance, all things ECE compliance, and so this is not one you'll want to miss. The QR code to register is on the screen, or you can go to ecewebinars.com/compliance, or of course, check out the link in the chat. Now, November 12th, Kristen and Liza are joining to talk about your role in creating a positive environment in the classroom or for your program. So you can scan the QR code on the screen to join. go to ecewebinars.com/thermostat or check out the link in the chat. And then finally, Amy is coming from the work of play, talking about how teachers can teach without taking over. And I think that's kind of like a similar thread and theme as to what some of the concepts that Noah was talking about today. So if you're interested about how this might look from her perspective, feel free to scan the QR code on the screen or go to ecewebinars.com/scaffolding, or of course, link in the chat. This one is the first week of December. Now, we are at that point of the webinar where I get to announce our lucky door prize winner. And today, the person going home with a $100 gift card is Kelsey Simons. Congratulations to Kelsey Simons. We will be in touch with you shortly to get you your gift card. And if your name is not Kelsey Simons, there is still a chance for you to win a $150 gift card. All you have to do is fill out the survey that pops up. It's going to pop up in the next couple minutes. As soon as I end the Zoom call, it takes 30 seconds to fill out, and it is feedback that you can give me and my team about what you like, what you don't like, what we can do better. We read every single word and syllable. It helps us tremendously as we continue to build out content for you all. And so we would, greatly appreciate if you filled it out. One person who does fill it out will be selected at random. We'll notify you via email, and we'll get you your $150 gift card. It's like a win-win-win for everyone involved. So really, really appreciate if you could spend the extra 30 seconds. Again, it is such a tremendous help. Now, for everyone that joined live, has been here live since the very beginning till now on October 22nd, you will get an automatic official certificate of attendance by email within the next 7 days. And if you joined late, or if you're watching this as a recording, here is the link to download your blank certificate link. You're not going to get an automatic email. This is how you can get it. You can go to ecewebinars.com/allies. You can check out the link in the chat or scan the QR code. I do want to encourage everyone to check out our website in general, ecewebinars.com. We are putting out a ton of content all through this year and also already into 2026. You can go through and register for any sessions that seem interesting to you. Our system will automatically notify you in advance as it comes up. We also have put together recently an admin-focused course. It's a 5-course series specifically about best practices for running and growing a childcare program. So it covers things like marketing and enrollment and operations and just the very businessy tactical sides of running a childcare program. So if you're interested to learn a bit more about that, check out the website. We have a whole page about it. And for everyone else, thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you at another one of our webinars again shortly, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. And otherwise, I hope you all stay happy and healthy, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, everyone.